This video is going to be a film study look at some of the issues that the Ravens offensive line had in the first half of our Week 18 win over the Cleveland Browns, and the small or slight adjustments that Todd Monken and the offensive staff utilized to exploit some of those things that the Browns were doing successfully. They held Derrick Henry to 8 yards on 6 carries in the first half, and then he exploded, had a 30-yard run, a 25-yard run, a 20-yard run, and a 43-yard touchdown in the second half to account for the large majority of what we were able to produce. Lamar Jackson didn't have the most efficient performance from a statistical standpoint. Still should be enough to win him his third MVP, if you ask me, because of the historic nature of the season. I'm going to focus on the offensive line in this video because I believe it's the only thing that can really hold this offense back. Meaning, if there's pressure on Lamar Jackson in the middle of passing concepts, that will impact his ability to get the ball out on time and in the location where it's needed. You'll see at least one example of that in this video. I think I've got 17 plays queued up, and we're going to focus on the first half. Some of the things that teams do when we have Pat Ricard on the field and when we don't, and how we show an incredible lack of awareness towards that pattern, if you ask me, at least in the first half in this game. And the offensive line issues, it's not just one guy. Multiple guys have trouble with players crossing their face, stunting or slanting across their face. Number one, we still do have some difficulty with the same stunt, an X stunt between the D tackle and D end. Teams run it against us often, and they put their best player, in this case, the Browns put their best player, Myles Garrett, in position to be able to stunt back to the outside. We were fortunate that two of the situations where it looked like it would have, quote, worked, Lamar Jackson was actually rolling away to his right-hand side. So there's something to be said about the Browns' awareness doing that to our left as opposed to our right. Let's get to the film, and we'll have a significant number of these plays annotated or with data displayed for you to give you some information. This is the first play of the game, and I would call it a down sweep concept. So we're going to get penetration from the top side. It's Myles Garrett. We missed this block multiple times. It's not just on Myles Garrett, so I think it's important to mention, yes, it's a difficult thing for Mark Andrews to accomplish. He's got his head behind. He doesn't get his head in front at all. You're trying to pin Myles Garrett down and get to the outside with Rosengarten. So maybe we don't necessarily want his head in front, because if you get his head in front, then maybe Myles Garrett can spin out of it. But the explosion that Myles Garrett has and the absolute train that he is once he gets on a particular track, makes me question whether this is a viable strategy to run at a player like him from this alignment. Now, oftentimes Myles Garrett actually ends up lining up over here. So it's interesting that he played so much on our right, his left. But there's the scheme that you've got with Andrews pinning down on Garrett, Rosengarten pulling out to the outside. Additional to that, we can't get this done. This is an example of what I mean when I say players crossing our face. And now there's no Ricard on the field in this situation. You could just have a player, a defensive tackle, taking a stunt, and it looks like there's a coordinated slant with this D tackle slanting in that direction and this D tackle slanting in that direction. Our steps early in games, in my opinion, are sometimes a little bit too big and too committed. And what I mean by that is we're committed to that player, the defensive tackle, being in this gap and playing that gap only. And anytime someone slants or crosses our face, they shouldn't be able to win this easily. And it's not just Falele on this particular play. It's multiple guys during the course of the first half. Oline certainly wasn't the issue here. This is still the first possession. It's a 3rd and 4. So you're going to get an over concept by Mark Andrews and then a little in-breaking route by Zay Flowers late before he got injured. At the time that I record this, it's come out that it's apparently a day-to-day injury as described by Harbaugh. So that's great news that the MRI confirmed that there's no significant tearing, apparently. If there were, you'd have to think that we were told that. Again, nothing to do with the offensive line here. This is a play that's got to be made. Whether it's cold or not, that ball is, maybe that ball is 6 inches elevated from where Zay Flowers would like it to be under perfect scenario. But you never know the throwing lane that a quarterback has in terms of the defensive line in front of them and the rush. That's one that I think Zay Flowers would obviously like to have back. It's our second possession. This is after Nate Wiggins' pick six has put us up 7-0, and our 4th and 1. Watch Grant Delpit here. Now, this isn't like tremendous awareness by Grant Delpit and the Browns defense, all right? It's just basic level awareness for me. I mean, it's Pat Ricard on the field in a 4th and 1 situation. We're in the pistol, and we've generally, in this part of the field and others, been a right-handed football team for the better part of 3 or 4 or 5 years. Yeah, we got a right-handed quarterback. He's pointing. Delpit is pointing, gathering the troops, bringing the inside linebackers over, and we miss a block in the case of Isaiah Likely, and then Ricard. Again, whether he's supposed to get his head in front or not. In this case, the defensive end, or the linebacker, is able to slide underneath. Now, he doesn't impact the play necessarily, but Lamar definitely sees the other player's jersey flash in front of his face, so bounces it. It should be a 2-on-1. But according to the blocking scheme, it's a down scheme, if you ask me. It should be a 2-on-1 with Lamar and Henry. Is it predetermined whether Lamar would pitch or not? Is it part of the scheme or the design? It certainly looks like it, but who knows? I don't know what those guys have said. Really, who wouldn't be able to recognize this at this point? I mean, he's pointing at Ricard and waving his teammates over, and lo and behold, those are the two guys, 59 and 43, that Likely and Ricard are designed to block. Ricard at least is able to win when he's losing, meaning he's not able to absolutely close off 43, but he's able to continue and stay on him. Likely just completely whiffs. Could be something they've said there in terms of why we run to Ricard's side so much. I think that Kolar and Ricard oftentimes are interchangeable, and what I mean is, perhaps I won't be able to explain this well. I kind of touched on this maybe about a month ago when Kolar was out. When Kolar and Ricard are both on the field, Kolar almost kind of takes Ricard's spot from a predictability standpoint, meaning our tendency almost becomes to run to Kolar's side. So I think that hopefully in the next couple of days as we prep for the Steelers, the Ravens are able to utilize those tendencies, those patterns, because it's my opinion that teams use that as a pre-snap indicator, basically a directional tell for where the football is going. And on that 4th and 1, if you ask me, Grant Delpit is giving us all the confirmation we need that's a thing that happens in real time. That I believe that those situations like the one we just saw can't occur in the playoffs. And what I mean is not the failed 4th down, not Lamar trying to flip it to Derrick Henry, getting in the red zone and not getting points. I don't care what the score is. I don't care if we're down 10-0 in the second quarter. We need points to beat the Chiefs, to beat the Bills, hell, to maybe even beat the Steelers next week. We cannot afford to get down there in the red zone or nearby and come away with no points. We're good, but we're not that good. Our margin for error is not that big. Moving forward here, this is the second quarter, middle of the second quarter. We've taken a 14-3 lead. I'm not going to cover all of the scoring plays, but we're focusing on the offensive line. Linderbaum is beat here again by a D-tackle crossing his face, and I can't believe how slow Falele is getting out of his stance on this particular snap. It almost looks like it's slowed down. It's that bad. And then the inside linebacker is able to flow through. Linderbaum is stepping to the D-tackle, the same D-tackle I talked about earlier, who is crossing Linderbaum's face. Why? Probably because Pat Ricard is on our left, the top side of our screen, or the defense is right. It's my opinion that backside D-tackles are often given the freedom or tasked with slanting towards Pat Ricard. And in this case, here's Ricard, same play from the end zone angle, by the way. And there's the D-tackle that's going to stunt across Linderbaum's face and get in there and disrupt the play. Also, along with that, the inside linebacker 59 that Falele is supposed to combo up to gets a free run through. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than that from a Linderbaum and Falele standpoint. People called me a downer in my reaction video Saturday. I get it after we just won the game, finished 12-5, which is, an incredible achievement to be 12-5 after 13-4 of the season before. Really would have been 14-3. We played our starters in Week 18 against the Steelers in 2023. It is a great accomplishment to win the AFC North 2 years in a row. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say that I still have concerns about the offensive line, and it's not just right guard. 4th and 3, that same possession. We're up 14-3. This is going to be the incomplete pass to Andrews. Now, he's trying to pick for Wallace here, so that's kind of interesting. It looks like his release is held up. That's because he's trying to screen for Wallace. He's intentionally holding up his release to allow Wallace to go underneath. The DB goes over the top. Additional to that, the Browns are in an interesting situation from a coverage standpoint. I believe this is man free with a low hole dropper and a middle of the field free safety. That's a Jim Schwartz special. But on this particular play, because Henry is pass proing, the guy assigned to guard him kind of sits, and he ends up almost trying to sit in the window of this route here to Bateman and possibly Wallace going underneath. Now, and while it's not that Wallace is open, mind you, but I'm just saying it's a man-free coverage, but this guy's response is to hold depth. Why? Well, the line to gain is the 20-yard line. There's no reason for him to come forward and attack Derrick Henry. It's just disciplined defense. You have to give the Browns credit to some degree for how they played, how much they competed. And along those same lines, some guy named Mitchell gets the pass defense, knocking it out of Andrews' hands. Now, the ball is thrown. I was right for what I said in my reaction video. Ball's thrown a little bit behind him, but Lamar is under duress here trying to get this pass out. First of all, Linderbaum is kind of getting walked back a little bit by 97 into Lamar's lap. That's the first thing that kind of pushes him out to the right. Rosengarten initially handled this defensive end off the snap. And then just a huge step right here. Watch his huge step with his left foot. Just loses his balance and doesn't stay within the frame of his own body. And then 54 is able to get outside. So along with Linderbaum being walked back, Rosengarten got himself out of position. 54 didn't do anything to win here necessarily. It forces Lamar into an unsettled situation. He throws it, and it's just a little bit behind Andrews. I get it. People don't like hearing me say that. Like, they think I'm criticizing Lamar. I mean, it's just reality that this ball, if it's thrown a little further out in front here, is an easier catch and conversion for Andrews. But again, Lamar's ability to do so is impacted, in my opinion, by the quality of the offensive line play. That's been a dynamic or an element that we've dealt with often in 2024. At this point in Week 18, we kind of shouldn't be surprised. Moving forward here to the third quarter, and it's almost like a light bulb just went off. Something to mention in terms of Ricard being on the field is they started putting him on the midline more, which is I formation. And I have to give a shout out to Stacy Van Diver in our Ravens Discord. I think he said it during the first quarter. He said, this is an I formation game. The cool thing about it is the Ravens have the ability to go into this other mode. The I formation doesn't put as much pressure on Lamar. He's able to play with his back to the defense. So you don't know whether he's handing it off or keeping it, number one. Number two, you can get players out of the game. And so this is a really nice call in my opinion because Myles Garrett was playing off on our right side, their left. Again, it's a little bit of a switch in terms of his alignment pre-snap from where he generally plays. So we're able to utilize a guy like Mark Andrews on the backside. It's almost a 2-for-1. Now, you guys don't see it until late, but there's a corner out here. There's a corner out here who's lined up over Andrews. Someone has to cover him, number one. Number two, because they play a four-man defensive line, a four-man front, that defensive end pretty much has to be outside of the tight end. Look at what's opened up here underneath of Myles Garrett. He's not the only defensive end that plays it like this. He's going to play in a 9 technique. It gives Andrews a chance to win. Now, Henry still does have to make a little jump cut and then stiff arm the corner. It's brutal play by Derrick Henry. I mean, he's just special. I think he's the only guy in NFL history to have ever run for 1,900 yards twice in his career. I mean, you can pretty much get his bust ready in the Hall of Fame. I could be wrong. I think he's the first player to ever rush for 1,500 yards and 15 TDs 3 times in his career. So multiple players have done that twice. I think some names like Emmitt Smith, Jim Brown, among others. Derrick Henry, I believe, is the first guy to do it 3 times in his career. Truly unbelievable. Same possession, still 2nd and 15. It's after a penalty. We're still up 14-3 in the third quarter. And this little like semi-roll concept where we put the tight end or fullback, in this case Ricard, on the edge defender. And Lamar throws this really before Andrews is quote, open. He makes a great play on the ball. It's a great location by Lamar. We have to give him credit for that. We ended up, getting a touchdown out of that, I think a couple of plays later. So the concept here is that you've got all the offensive linemen working this way, tight end or fullback, in this case Ricard, dealing with the defensive end, and the running back running out into the flats. He could also escort. And so what I mean by that is if the defensive end is able to beat our fullback or tight end, he could also help out in that regard. So pretty cool usage, if you ask me. Most of the routes on this concept, obviously with Lamar flowing to the side, most of the routes are going to emanate, even if they emanate from the left-hand side of our offense, are going to flow to the right, almost really a flood concept. And you can see the ball is thrown out in front of Andrews. Nice catch by him against Grant Delpit. We scored 2 plays later to make it 21-3. Really start to open up some space between us and a Browns team that, they came to compete. Don't get me wrong. It's a 2nd and 10, same quarter, third quarter. And I want to talk about this play. I've covered it in 2 other videos since the Steelers game. It's a trap concept. Now, if you as a defense are going to take your D end and run him at the quarterback's outside hip or at the mesh point, whatever people want to call it, we can block everyone. We can block everyone up. This is a great play. This is a great concept for how we run it. It gives Derrick Henry really a 2-way go if the defensive end is going to do this. If he's going to step up field and then, try to fold back inside late, it gives Henry a 2-way go. So what I mean by this, as it develops, is Linderbaum is going to block back on the shade, nose tackle. Voorhees is supposed to trap this guy right here. And as Henry flows through here, he could hit this front side underneath of Voorhees' trap block, his kickout block. Or he could wind this back if this nose tackle right here starts to flow or roll over the top of Linderbaum's back block. It happened against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it was Hayward, but I could be wrong. He wound it back. Is it a read by Lamar? It certainly looks like it. In any case, it's a great concept. I think this concept, guys, is probably averaging 12 yards per play since we started to utilize it a ton against the Steelers. Also, it puts the backside inside linebacker in incredible conflict because we could be arc releasing this. So what I mean by that is, and you catch a little bit of likely right here on the left-hand side of your screen, we could be arc releasing this and likely, I don't have much screen to work with, going in this direction off screen to our left, forgive the drawing there, and Lamar keeping it. So that linebacker's got to kind of hold. We're talking about this guy here, and it just sets him up to get smacked in the mouth by our left tackle, Ronnie Stanley. Henry winds it back. This may be one of our most unstoppable plays, along with the dual read option concept, whether it's at a diamond or likely coming across the middle of the field. Really unreal that Henry popped off 25 and 20-yard runs in the third quarter after being held to 8 yards on 6 carries in the opening half. I think we should be concerned, and I get it if other people and whoever's listening want to say, hey, Coach, I don't think you should be so negative about our offensive line. We've gotten a lot of things done with them this year. We certainly have. 7,000 yards of offense. Lamar threw for 4,000, I think threw 41 touchdowns against only 4 interceptions. He ran for 900 himself. So we set incredible records. It's come out this morning, apparently, that no one, well, I guess Harbaugh won't admit whether anyone has asked to interview Todd Monken for a head coaching job. Selfishly would love to see him return for another season. I wonder if there's a part of Todd Monken that thinks, hey, I'd like to come back with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and an improved offensive line. I think that's got to be a focus in the offseason. I get it. People are going to have wildly disparate or different opinions depending on their focus, and we've certainly been successful. I think we could be even better, in my opinion. So Ricard moving to the midline. Look at the inside linebacker shift. They're probably just shifting to match numbers. But I think for this offense, with Ricard out here and Kolar at the same time, we can use them to thwart or exploit defenses that want to kind of slant to Ricard's side. You can't do it when he's on the midline because you don't know where he's going to go, whether he's going to go to our right or to our left. The Browns have got this kind of pseudo bear look with Delpit, who ends up in a mismatch with Stanley. And then Ricard. Henry kind of cuts it back. I do think you get a nice job here on a combo by Linderbaum and then Falele. Also, Voorhees is a really good rep there as well. So interior offensive line, guard, center, right guard. Those guys get things done on this particular play. Linderbaum able to combo up to the inside linebacker, kind of wraps the guy around. Linderbaum is so good at adjusting in the middle of zone concept plays. He's just built for it, obviously with his speed and quickness and He almost kind of can read the defense like a running back. It's a 7-yard game. We didn't score. We didn't score on that possession. Would have been great to get up 28-3. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a unique situation on our hands. The Browns hung around and missed 21-10 in the fourth quarter, and this is a huge play by Lamar and Rashad Bateman. I'll give you the end zone angle first. That's the stunt that the Browns are going to run. Lamar ends up working out to this side, so he works away from that stunt. It's Myles Garrett. And so Lamar drifts out to the right, and you can see Bateman wide open underneath. Just no awareness by Delpit. It's a cover 3. All right, now it has an invert 2 look to it a little bit. I'll get to the all-22 and show you what I mean. The free safety's kind of sitting down quickly. He's not really getting a ton of depth, but he's just playing the sticks. It's 3rd and 8. So this corner up here, he gives away that, it's 3. I don't mean gives away pre-snap, but post-snap you can kind of tell. If it was invert 2, his post-snap alignment would be more in here, inside of the top of the numbers. Watch where he pedals. Watch where he works. He's got a solo receiver up there in the case of Devontae Walker. But the guy that I'm talking about is this free safety here. So you've got deep third. I mean, it really could be quarter, half if people want to call it that. Point being, Bateman is able to find work over the top of the second level of the defense. Again, I would call it a cover 3 where the free safety is just sitting or working at the first route to the sticks. 4-man rush is probably what we're going to see a lot of unless teams want to force the ball out of Lamar's hands. So this is a 3rd and 8 that I thought was a huge momentum swing for the Ravens. I know we were going to win the game either way, but to be able to win it a little more comfortably, well, we still had Henry in the game with 3 minutes and 25 seconds left, something like that. I would have liked to have seen us get those guys off the field earlier to get them a little bit more of an opportunity to rest. But this is a huge conversion because it gives us, well, we go down and score here. This is a play that the Ravens used twice, a play concept, I should say, that the Ravens used twice in the second half and once in the first half. Didn't succeed in the first half, mind you. It's an outside zone concept away from the motion. And Grant Delpit allows himself to get pinned inside both times. It's Tylan Wallace in this case. Ronnie Stanley kind of gets to the outside of the D end. Henry one-on-one with a corner. Just a bad idea from a defensive standpoint. But keep this one in mind for a little bit later because we run the same concept. And Delpit, who's a smart player, and showed it on Saturday, his intelligence level, his awareness pre-snap and post-snap, allows himself to get pinned inside in the same way when this play shows up the second time. Along with that, Henry bounces this and goes outside the corner, so keep that in mind when we see this play again. His 43-yard touchdown to cap the scoring and provide for the final differential, 35-10. That play, he's able to cut it up inside of the corner, so really almost kind of like acts like a setup. Henry's just incredibly intelligent and prepared for pretty much every situation. Same drive, we're still only up 21-10 after a penalty. It's 1st and 15. And power pass, I would say, to Ricard, making it look like he's going to kick out the defensive end to the field, which again is Myles Garrett. And in this case, Henry cuts Garrett to give Lamar time and a throwing lane. Ricard with a great catch. This one really reminds me of 2 catches that he had against the Minnesota Vikings in 2021 on a Sunday afternoon, a late game, if you recall. It's the week before the Miami Dolphins deconstructed our offense with the stick split zero stuff. Ricard, I think, had like 4 catches in that game, 3 of them in the second half. One of them, in fact, a touchdown. This one was nearly so, gets us down to the 2. Henry scored pretty much on the next snap, makes it 28-10. We all know the game was over at that point. But I want to show this play because it's the same concept I talked about a moment ago. It's an outside zone stretch concept. I don't think we can wait to recognize some of our tendencies. And so what I mean by that is Ricard's not on the field, but here is Kolar. And so we're going to motion across with Bateman the same way we did before. We're going to run the zone, the outside zone, up to the top side. Only this time Henry kind of bends it up underneath of the corner. Delpit allows himself to get pinned inside. Really unusual reaction by him, given that we'd already shown this play. It illustrates to me that he's not reading anything because Henry's path isn't a downhill path. Henry's path is clearly off tackle. Maybe it isn't fully represented by that second line. It's pretty close if you ask me. Wallace seals him off, Henry cuts inside of the corner this time, the same corner, takes it to the house, 43 yards. We'll get you the end zone angle of this one. I'm okay if you don't share the same concerns about our offensive line. I think I've tried to show you illustrations of them doing good things in the second half versus some of the difficulties or problems we had in the first 30 minutes. Here's Voorhees. This is a really nice reach. I don't know that Macari gets this done. One-on-one, meaning. So there's some potential there for Voorhees. I can't give a definitive right now on how well Ben Cleveland played. Sunday was extremely busy for me, and so rather than putting out 2 or 3 smaller videos, I tried to go with a longer form content because I felt like my thoughts were somewhat at odds with each other. I didn't think the offensive line played clean and well in the first half. I thought they rebounded in the second half. Did the play calling improve? Did the position players effort improve? I think our position players are who they are. All Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, Rashad Bateman, and Mark Andrews need is time and space, and they're going to execute. The offensive line's job is to provide that for them. And in the first half, I did not think they lived up to the standard. I didn't think they did as quality a job creating run lanes, obviously, and giving Lamar Jackson time and free throwing lanes, open throwing lanes to get the football out to other guys. I'm welcome to hear or listen to other people's opinions if they differ or they agree. I just was not impressed with our offensive line at all in the first half, and in my opinion, that could be an issue moving forward. If we are going to struggle offensively, it'll either be turnovers or offensive line inconsistencies. It won't be Derrick Henry not producing. It certainly won't be Lamar Jackson not producing, or Mark Andrews, or Rashad Bateman, or Likely, or whoever gets opportunities. It sounds like it's better news about Zay Flowers than we anticipated, even though this week's game against the Steelers, is up in the air if he's considered day-to-day. As an aside, to have a weapon like Derrick Henry at this point in time get to 1,900 yards, it would be easy for someone, and they actually did it during the broadcast, to say the Ravens have a dominant offensive line. I mean, come on. How could someone have watched any film of our team this year and say that we have a dominant offensive line? Do we execute certain concepts? And has Henry popped off a number of big plays? Of course. He's had an unbelievable season. He's a Hall of Fame caliber player before he came to Baltimore. All he's done is add to his resume here. The combination of Lamar and Derrick Henry, I think, is quite capable of carrying us to a Super Bowl. And all we need is the offensive line to be good and just not poor. And that gives us a great shot to get that done, whether we're playing at home or on the road. That's my opinion. And I feel like it's in line with my reaction video from Saturday night. Let me know what you think of that thought in the comment section, and how you view my film study breakdown here, the plays that I chose to illustrate my thoughts, my summary judgment on what I think was a poor first half from our offensive line, but we rebounded to get it together in the second half. I just wouldn't want us to think that that's going to work against the Chiefs, the Bills, or maybe even the Steelers in the playoffs in the same manner. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this film study look at the Ravens offense in their Week 18 win over the Browns, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.